My parents said, "Your brother is the future of this family. You're just not built for it." Then paid his full college tuition while I took loans and worked double shifts. Graduation day, they showed up with flowers for him, but when they saw who walked across that stage first, Mom's flowers hit the floor. My name is Nolan. I'm 23. My brother Tyler is 25. We grew up in the same house, same hallway, same dinner table, same parents, and somehow ended up in two different families. That's what favoritism does. It doesn't split a family in half. It builds two separate families inside the same walls and pretends they're one. Tyler was the future. That's the word they used. Not talented, not smart, not hardworking. Future. Like he was a mutual fund and I was the service fee. Keith, our father, is a regional manager for a supply chain company who communicates through sports analogies and firm handshakes and has never once asked me how I'm doing without following it with, "And how's work?" As if my emotional state is only relevant insofar as it affects my productivity, which is, now that I think about it, exactly how he sees both of his sons as assets with different projected returns. Diane, our mother, is a woman who keeps a clean house, cooks on Sundays, loves both her sons, and chose one of them. She'd argue with that sentence. She'd say, "I love you both equally." And I believe she feels that. I believe she feels equal love the way someone feels equal hunger and then eats at one restaurant every time. The feeling is real. The behavior tells a different story. Tyler is the kind of person who makes a room warmer when he walks in. He's funny. He's loud. He tells stories with his hands. He remembers your dog's name and asks about it the next time he sees you. I'm the kind of person who shows up early and leaves on time and nobody notices either. Tyler is a campfire. I'm the person who brought the matches and nobody remembers because the fire is more interesting than the lighter. The favoritism wasn't a single event. It was weather. Constant, ambient, everywhere. Tyler got driving lessons from Keith at 16. I taught myself from a YouTube video in a parking lot at 17. Tyler's birthday parties had themes. Mine had cake, the store-bought kind from the grocery aisle that says "Happy Birthday" in generic cursive because nobody planned far enough ahead to order one with a name on it. Tyler broke a window playing baseball in the backyard and Keith said, "That's my athlete." I got a B+ in calculus and Keith said, "That's fine." When I was 17, I texted Diane asking about college options. Her reply, which I still have because phones remember things families prefer to forget, "Tyler is already there. We can't do two. Get a job and help out." Keith followed up an hour later, a separate text, unprompted, like they discussed it in the kitchen and assigned follow-up responsibilities the way Keith's job taught him to delegate. "Stop dreaming. You're not your brother. Stop dreaming." 5 letters in the first word. For in the second, 2 words that took less than a second to type and have taken 6 years to stop hearing. They weren't said in anger. That's the part that makes them heavier. They were said as direction, guidance, parental advice delivered with the same certainty Keith uses when telling someone to take the highway instead of the back roads. Like he was saving me time by eliminating a path that was never mine to take. They didn't just say no to funding. They said no to the idea of me. The concept of Nolan in a classroom was, to them, a category error, like a toaster in a swimming pool. "You've got strong hands," Keith said once, at the dinner table, holding his fork, looking at me with what I think he believed was pride. "Use them." I got a job. 2, actually. Warehouse at 6 a.m. Restaurant at 5 p.m. I used my hands. I also used the 3 hours between shifts to enroll in community college without telling anyone, because telling them felt like asking permission from people who'd already stamped "denied" on the application before I filed it. But before I tell you about college, I need to tell you about the rent. Because the rent is the part that turns this from favoritism into something with a receipt. At 17, while still living at home, parents charged me $400 a month in rent because I was working now and should contribute. Tyler lived in the same house until he was 20 and paid $0. Not reduced. Not when you can. $0. I paid $400 a month for 12 months. $4,800. Through Aunt Rosa, I later found out the money went directly toward Tyler's first-year tuition deposit. I funded the start of my brother's education without knowing it, from a bedroom I was renting, in a house where the other sons slept for free. I was the scholarship Tyler never applied for. Let me tell you about Tyler's college experience, and then I'll tell you about mine, and you can hold them side by side the way I've been holding them for 4 years. Tyler enrolled at State with a full parental package. Tuition, $14,400 per year. Apartment near campus, $1,200 per month, paid by Keith. Car insurance, $1,200 per year. Monthly allowance, $800. He started as pre-med because Keith told someone at a barbecue that his son was going to be a doctor, and Tyler didn't correct him, which is how most of Tyler's life decisions get made, by not correcting someone else's assumption. Pre-med lasted 1 semester. He failed biology with a 47 and withdrew from chemistry before the final. He told Diane it wasn't for him, which is a phrase Tyler uses the way other people use GPS, to redirect without acknowledging he's lost. Semester 2, business. Because everyone needs a business degree. That's a direct quote from Keith, who has never taken a business class and confuses revenue with profit in conversations I've overheard and said nothing about, because correcting Keith is not a productive use of anyone's time. Cost of year 1. Tuition $14,400. Apartment $14,400. Car insurance $1,200. Allowance $9,600. Total $39,600. Credits earned toward his eventual degree 6 credits out of $39,600. That's $6,600 per credit. I once calculated the cost per credit of my own education, $387. I did that math on a napkin during a break at the restaurant, and then I used the napkin to clean a table because we were short-staffed and the math didn't change the world. It just confirmed what I already felt, which is that the world I grew up in had 2 price tags for the same last name. My year 1. Community college. Night classes. I signed the enrollment forms alone in an admissions office that smelled like floor wax and the particular staleness of a building that closes at 9 p.m. and doesn't have enough windows. The woman at the desk had a pin with a fake flower taped to it so nobody would steal it, which tells you everything about the budget of an institution that educated me better than the one my parents spent $39,600 on. I took 4 classes per semester. Worked the warehouse from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Came home, slept for 2 hours on a mattress on the floor of an apartment I shared with a guy named Curtis who played guitar badly and apologized for it constantly, which is the ideal roommate quality. Drove to the restaurant at 4:30. Worked until 11. Came home. Studied until 1 a.m. Set the alarm for 5. I made Dean's List my first semester. The letter arrived in the campus mailbox, a small envelope with the school's logo and my name printed in a font that looked official in a way nothing in my life had ever looked official before. I opened it in my car in the campus parking lot because I didn't have a desk and my apartment didn't have a kitchen table and Curtis was sleeping and I didn't want to turn on a light. The car smelled like the fryer at the restaurant because my jacket smelled like the fryer at the restaurant because I was the fryer at the restaurant most nights. I put the letter in a shoebox under my bed. I didn't frame it. Didn't show anyone. There was nobody to show it to. The shoebox became a habit. Every Dean's List letter, every semester, into the box. 7 letters over 4 years. 7 semesters of being the best version of myself in a room where nobody from my family knew I was sitting. Diane, meanwhile, was telling Aunt Rosa and every relative with a phone that Nolan decided college wasn't for him and preferred working with his hands. She rewrote my story to match the version that made Tyler's funding look fair. Every Thanksgiving, every birthday call, every family group chat, my mother described a son who chose to be less. The truth was the opposite. But the truth requires someone to ask, and nobody asked. Tyler's year 2, business. He passed most classes. Failed statistics. Retook it in summer, which cost an additional $2,200 that Keith paid without comment. Tyler got a C the second time, which the family treated like a victory and which I would have treated like a Tuesday. Year 3 is where it got expensive. Tyler switched from business to communications. His 3rd major in 3 years. Each switch cost extra semesters. Each extra semester cost $14,400 in tuition plus the apartment, the insurance, the allowance. Diane didn't flinch. Keith refinanced nothing because Keith wasn't paying attention to totals. He was paying attention to the idea that Tyler was finding himself, which is a luxury that costs $14,400 per semester and requires someone else's money to fund. Tyler hit academic probation in year 3. GPA, 1.7. Diane and Keith hired a private tutor. $75 per hour, 3 sessions per week, for 1 semester. That's $4,500. The tutor didn't just tutor. She helped with papers, which is a phrase that means different things depending on how much you're paying and how little you're asking about the process. Tyler's GPA climbed to 2.1. Enough to stay enrolled. Enough to continue the investment. For $1,500 to keep Tyler from failing the degree they were paying for. During the same semester, I was working a double on Thanksgiving because the warehouse pays time and a half, and I needed $186 for a textbook on thermodynamics that the library didn't have and couldn't order. Running total for Tyler through year 3. Tuition $43,200. Apartment $43,200. Insurance $3,600. Allowance $28,800. Tutor $4,500. Summer retake $2,200. Miscellaneous for $1,500 in various bailouts Rosa tracked through overheard phone calls and credit card statements she saw on the kitchen counter. Total, approximately $130,000. For Tyler, through 3 years. For a 2.1 GPA in communications. My year 2, I transferred to state. Same university as Tyler, different universe. A professor at the community college made it happen, and her name is one of the only names in this story that doesn't make me tired to say. Linda Marsh. She teaches introductory engineering and eats granola bars at her desk at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays because she stays late for students who can't come during office hours because they're working 2 jobs, which is a sentence that describes her schedule and also describes why I owe her more than I owe my parents, which is saying something because I owe my parents $4,800 in rent that funded my brother's tuition deposit. So the bar for owing someone more than that is technically very high, and Professor Marsh cleared it anyway. She noticed my grades. She noticed my attendance record, which was perfect, not because I'm disciplined by nature, but because skipping a class I was paying for with money I earned at a warehouse felt like setting my own paycheck on fire and watching it burn, which is a metaphor my father would appreciate if he thought I was capable of metaphors. She noticed that I smelled like drywall dust and fryer oil most evenings, a combination that doesn't improve with time or with the body spray I kept in my car that cost $4.99 and worked for approximately 14 minutes. She wrote my transfer recommendation, called the admissions office personally, helped me apply for 3 grants I didn't know existed because nobody in my family had ever navigated a financial aid system, or if they had, they navigated it for Tyler and didn't mention the map to me. And she said something in her office that I carry in the same place other people carry their father's advice. Except this advice came from a woman eating a granola bar at 7 p.m. who had no obligation to say it. I've been teaching 22 years. I've seen 3 students like you. 2 of them changed their lives. The third gave up because nobody told him he was allowed to succeed. Don't be the third. She said it and went back to her grading. I sat in the chair across from her desk for about 10 seconds longer than normal. The office smelled like toner and the granola bar and the specific carpet and paint smell of a building that was built to be functional and not to impress anyone. I walked out, drove to the restaurant, worked the dinner shift, didn't tell anyone what she said, but I wrote it on the inside cover of my thermodynamics textbook in pencil, which I still have, because you don't throw away a textbook that has the most important sentence of your life written inside it. I transferred. Full course load. Engineering. The kind of coursework that requires you to understand forces and loads and how materials behave under stress, which is useful professionally and also a fairly accurate description of my personal life. I kept both jobs. The warehouse manager, Dale, figured out I was in school. He's a man who wears the same steel-toe boots every day regardless of weather and has a tattoo of his daughter's name on his forearm that he never explains and nobody asks about, because Dale communicates through schedule changes and grunts and the occasional nod that means good job, in a language only warehouse workers speak fluently. He shifted my hours from 6 to 2 to 5 to 1 so I could make a 2 p.m. lab section. Never mentioned it. Never asked about my classes. I found out from another worker that Dale told the floor supervisor to leave the kids' hours alone. The supervisor asked, "Is he in school?" Dale said, "He's in something." That's the closest thing to a letter of recommendation Dale will ever write. And it's the one that mattered most because it gave me the 2 hours, that gave me the lab section, that gave me the thesis, that gave me the diploma that my parents didn't know existed until a dean said my name into a microphone. Dean's list. Every semester at State. Every single one. The letters went in the shoebox, which by now was a different shoebox because the first one fell apart, which is what happens to cardboard when you store it under a mattress on the floor of a $475 per month apartment with questionable humidity control. 7 Dean's List letters total, community college through State. 7 envelopes I opened alone. 7 semesters of being the best version of myself in rooms where nobody from my family knew I existed as a student. Year 3. Senior thesis. Sustainable bridge design. My advisor said it was the strongest submission in 4 years. I won the departmental award. $1,500 prize. The ceremony was a Tuesday evening in a small auditorium with folding chairs and a projector that didn't work for the first 10 minutes, which the department chair handled by saying, "Technology is humbling," and then hitting the side of the projector, which fixed it, which is also how Dale fixes things at the warehouse, and possibly how all machines actually work. 20 people attended. I went alone. Ate the free cookies, oatmeal raisin, which nobody's favorite cookie is, but which was the only option, and I ate 4, because I hadn't eaten since the warehouse that morning. Shook the chair's hand. Drove to my restaurant shift in my one good shirt, the blue one from the thrift store, $8, ironed on a towel on the floor because I didn't own an ironing board. Worked until 11. 3 weeks before graduation, a structural engineering firm offered me a position. $74,000. Full benefits. Relocation stipend. The offer letter was signed and sitting in my glove compartment the morning of the ceremony. I had a career before I had a diploma in my hand. The parents who said I wasn't built for it were about to watch a son who was already employed at $74,000 walk across the stage before the son they invested $150,000 in, who had no offer, no interview pending, no plan for Monday. Tyler's years 4 and 5. Yes, 5. The communications degree that should have taken 4 took 5 because of the major switches and the failed classes and the summer retakes and the tutor and the general pace of a man who is strolling through an education someone else is sprinting to pay for. Final 2 years brought the total to tuition $72,000. Apartment $72,000. He stayed all 5 years. Same unit. Same rent. Keith paid monthly like a subscription to his son. Insurance $6,000. Allowance $48,000. 5 years at $800 per month. Tutor $4,500. Summer courses $4,400. Miscellaneous bailouts $4,100. Total parental investment in Tyler $150,000. Total parental investment in me $0. $150,000 to $0. That's not a gap. That's a different family wearing the same name. Tyler graduated with a 2.1 GPA, no honors, no internships, no job prospects, and a communications degree that qualified him to explain the degree to people at parties while holding a drink someone else paid for. I graduated with a 3.94 GPA, summa cum laude, a departmental award, a thesis, a job offer, and $54,000 in debt. Same ceremony, same auditorium, same stage, same dean reading names into the same microphone while 3,000 people sat in folding chairs and the air conditioning hummed unevenly because auditoriums are designed by people who've never sat in one for 3 hours. 2 brothers in the same building for the first time in 4 years, except one of them didn't know the other one was there. My parents drove in that morning. Diane brought flowers. White roses in cellophane, the kind you buy at the nicer grocery store, not the gas station, because this was Tyler's day and Tyler's days get the better flowers. She was wearing the blouse she wears to things she considers important, the blue one with the buttons. She always checks twice in the mirror, which I know because I've watched her do it before every event that matters to her, which until today did not include any event of mine. Keith had a graduation program. He'd circled Tyler's name on page 12 in blue pen, the same pen he keeps in the truck's cup holder, the one with the company logo that doesn't fully retract. He did not circle the name on page 6, under College of Engineering, with 3 honor designations next to it, because he didn't know it was there. Nobody told him. Nobody told either of them. Because for 4 years nobody asked what I was building between double shifts, and I stopped offering blueprints to people who didn't want to see the building. Row 14, Section C. That's where they sat. I know because I could see them from the stage. I had time to look because engineering graduates walk first. The dean started with the College of Engineering. He read the honors graduates. The auditorium had the specific hush of a large room full of people who are mostly on their phones waiting for one name. Nolan Archer, Bachelor of Science in Structural Engineering, summa cum laude. The woman sitting next to Diane, a complete stranger, someone else's mother in a green dress holding someone else's flowers, leaned over and whispered, "That means top of the class." Diane looked at the program. Found page 6. Found the name she didn't circle, the name she told Aunt Rosa had chosen not to go to college, the name she told every relative belonged to a boy who preferred his hands to his head. The flowers slid off her lap. White roses. Cellophane caught the auditorium light as they hit the floor, making a soft crinkling sound that nobody heard except maybe the person in row 13 and definitely me because I was watching. She stood up. I walked across the stage. Cap, gown, honor cord. The stage lights were warm on my face. My shoes, the black ones I'd bought at a thrift store for $14 and polished that morning with a rag, clicked on the wood. I could see row 14 from the podium. Mom standing, hand at her mouth. Dad holding the program open, flipping pages, searching for a name with the desperate speed of a man who just realized the document in his hands has information he should have known. The flowers on the floor, white petals against gray carpet. And Tyler, 3 rows behind them, looking at his phone, not yet aware that anything had changed, which is the most Tyler thing I've ever described. I shook the dean's hand. He said, "Congratulations." He was the second person to say it to me, after Professor Marsh. My parents never said it. Not then. Not after. The word floated in the space between his handshake and the rest of my life. I took the diploma cover. Walked off the other side of the stage. Didn't look at row 14 again. Tyler walked 38 minutes later. Communications. No honors. No designation. His name read the way you'd read a grocery item from a list. 38 minutes. That's how long the family sat in that auditorium after learning their unfunded son had just walked with the highest honors the university gives, while the $150,000 investment was still in a folding chair. 38 minutes of knowing. 38 minutes of the flowers on the floor. 38 minutes of Diane not picking them up. After the ceremony, Diane pushed through the crowd. She was moving against the flow of families posing for photos and grandparents being helped downstairs and children who were bored 3 hours ago and haven't recovered. She asked an engineering student, a kid in a blue honor cord holding a balloon, if he'd seen me. He said, "The summa cum laude guy?" He left right after. Didn't even stay for photos. She called my phone. It rang 6 times. I could hear the vibration against the center console where I'd placed it face down. I watched it ring the way you watch an oven timer count down when you're not hungry. It stopped. She didn't leave a voicemail. I was in my truck. Cap and gown on the passenger seat. Diploma cover in the center console, next to the job offer that had been there for 3 weeks. Radio off. Windows down. The parking lot smelled like exhaust and warm asphalt and the specific afternoon heat of a May day that hasn't decided whether it's spring or summer. I drove the route I'd driven 800 times in 4 years, between the warehouse and the campus and the restaurant and the apartment. Except this time, there was no shift starting and no class to make and no alarm to set for 5 a.m. Just a road and an open window and the sound of a truck driven by a man who'd finished something nobody asked him to start. Part of me wanted to go back, to stand in the lobby and let Diane find me and watch her face do whatever it was going to do. Part of me wanted to call Keith and say the number, $150,000 to 0, and let the math speak. And a small part of me, the part one sat with longest as the truck idled at a red light 3 blocks from campus, wanted her to have never seen it. Wanted to keep the graduation in the shoebox with the dean's list letters, private, mine, uncontaminated by the opinions of people who'd told me not to try. But the dean said my name into a microphone. Some boxes, once open, don't close. Tyler texted me that night. One message, "Why didn't you tell me?" I read it parked outside my apartment. The engine was off. The streetlight was buzzing the low electric hum of a bulb that's been flickering for months, and nobody's called maintenance because in neighborhoods like mine, maintenance is a concept, not a service. I read the message twice. Didn't respond. Not because I was angry at Tyler. Tyler didn't choose to be the investment any more than I chose to be the expense. But the answer to "why didn't you tell me" is nobody asked, and that answer fills a room, and a text message is not a room. First Thanksgiving after graduation. Aunt Rosa's house. Rosa is Diane's sister, a woman who keeps receipts the way other people keep photo albums, meticulously, chronologically, and with the understanding that someday the contents will be more useful than the container. She has a dining room that seats 14 and opinions she typically keeps below the volume of the conversation until the moment she doesn't. Dinner. Turkey. The whole family. Cousins, uncles, Diane, Keith, Tyler. I hadn't been to a family event in 2 years. I came because Rosa asked, personally on the phone, and said, "I think it's time they heard the truth from someone other than your mother." Rosa is the one person in the family who never told me what I wasn't built for. She told me what I was. She just waited until the table was full to say it. Between the turkey and the pie, Rosa stood up. She'd never done this before. Rosa is not a speech person. She's a listen-and-store person, the kind of woman who doesn't react at dinner but calls you the next morning with a sentence so precise it sounds like she wrote it at midnight. So when she stood, the fork stopped. The room stopped. Even the kids at the end of the table, who'd been quietly flicking mashed potatoes at each other for 20 minutes, went still. "For 4 years," she said, looking around the table, making eye contact with every adult before she landed on Diane. "I was told my nephew chose not to go to college. I was told he preferred working with his hands. I was told this at every holiday, every phone call, every family text. I believed it because why would a mother lie about her own son?" She paused. Rosa's pauses are deliberate. They're the silence before the weight drops. "I'd like everyone here to know that my nephew graduated summa cum laude in structural engineering while working 2 jobs and paying his own way. He graduated from the same university as Tyler. Same ceremony. He walked first. He walked with the highest honors the university gives. Nobody in this room knew he was a student. And that's not because he hid it. It's because nobody in this room asked." She looked at Diane. The table was silent. I could hear the oven ticking as it cooled in the kitchen. I could hear someone's ice shifting in a glass, that small settling sound that only happens when a room is quiet enough to hear it. Diane put her fork down. Her jaw tightened the way it does before she says something defensive, the way it tightened when I was 17 and she said, "We can't do two." The same muscle, the same reflex. "We didn't know," she said. "How could we help if we didn't know?" The table waited. I could feel Rosa looking at me. The cousins were looking at me. Keith was looking at his plate the way he looks at all surfaces that don't require him to make eye contact, intensely, silently, as if the turkey might offer an explanation he can't. Part of me wanted to stay quiet, to absorb it the way I've absorbed everything from this family since I was 17, to be the good son who doesn't make a scene. Part of me was already on the stage again, already walking, already past them. And a small part, the honest part, the part that worked double shifts for 4 years and 8 gas station sandwiches between jobs and slept 4 hours and never once complained to anyone who shared my last name, wanted to say it. "You didn't know because you never asked. In 4 years, you never once asked me what I was doing with my life. Not one phone call. Not one text. You decided I wasn't built for it when I was 17 and then you stopped looking. You did not know, Mom. You not asked. There's a difference." Diane opened her mouth, closed it. The room held still. Rosa sat down. The pie was served. The rest of the evening was quiet in the way rooms are quiet after someone says something true and nobody at the table has a sentence that's truer. Tyler moved back home after graduation. Diane converted the guest room back into Tyler's room, which involved removing the guest bedding and putting Tyler's old comforter back on, which she'd kept in a closet for 5 years the way you keep a place setting for someone you always expected to return. He's applying for jobs from the same desk where he did homework in middle school, the desk Keith assembled from an IKEA box when Tyler was 12 and which still has a sticker on the back from a band Tyler liked in 9th grade and has since forgotten. 40 applications. 3 interviews. No offers. His communications degree hangs on the wall in a frame Diane bought at a craft store for $22, which is roughly $6,817 less than each credit of that degree cost to earn. Tyler is 25 years old with a 2.1 GPA, no work experience, no internships, no skills that weren't subsidized, and a childhood bedroom in a house that was briefly refinanced to keep him enrolled. $150,000 and a boomerang. That's the return on their investment. I'm in a new city. Monday, start at the engineering firm. The apartment has a kitchen with a window that gets morning light, the kind of light that comes in at an angle that makes the counter glow and the coffee look better than it tastes, which is saying something because the coffee is good. I bought a French press with the relocation stipend, my first luxury purchase since a $4.99 body spray 4 years ago that didn't work. The graduation program is on my refrigerator, held by a magnet I took from a hotel where I stayed for a job training orientation. Page 6. My name. Summa cum laude. I threw away the shoebox last week. The 7 Dean's List letters are gone. I stood over the garbage can in my kitchen holding the box, and I thought about keeping them, thought about framing them, thought about the first one I opened in my car at the community college at 19 while I smelled like fryer oil and drywall dust, and then I let the box go. It made a soft sound when it hit the bottom of the can. Cardboard on plastic. Quiet. Final. I don't need proof in a box anymore. The proof is the apartment. The proof is the job. The proof is the $74,000 salary and the 5-year loan payoff plan taped to the inside of my closet door, color-coded, monthly targets. The same discipline that got me through 6,400 hours of double shifts applied to $54,000 of debt that will be gone by the time I'm 28. The proof is the wall, which is mine, in a place that's mine, in a life I built with the hands my father said were only good for labor and the mind my mother said wasn't built for anything worth building. Tyler's back in his childhood bedroom. His degree is on the wall. It cost $150,000 and it hangs above the same desk he had when he was 15. My degree cost me $54,000 in debt and 6,400 hours of work. It hangs in an apartment I pay for with a job I started Monday. Same last name. Different walls. $150,000 and a childhood bedroom. $54,000 in debt and a career. Which wall would you rather hang your degree on? Comments are open. Subscribe if you want more.